Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to open up August meeting of the Conservation Commission. Continued hearings, unless otherwise noted, will go to the September 16th date. We have a continued notice of intent for the construction of a single-family dwelling, driveway grading, and utilities from Gary Litchfield at 9 Hutchins Road. Is anyone here to represent him? It would be my recommendation to the board that we continue that to the September meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a continued notice of intent to construct a single-family home from Judith Wiesnot and Carol Bradley at 10 Exeter Way. They have requested a continuance to the October 21st meeting, and that would be my recommendation to the board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a continued notice of intent to install a solar array system from KV and Kelly Yasser at 138 Main Street and Ruth Yasser at 136 and 140 Main Street. You're on.
Okay. We're back again with our project on Main Street with the Sayers. The site hasn't really changed. I don't know if you want me to go through it again. I think everybody's heard where this is going and what it is. And we did a site walk with the planning board, members of the planning board, members of the Conservation Commission, and some of the selectmen were out there also. So we did walk the whole site, all the way back, walked some of the wetland line, went to where this crossing is here. So I think everybody's pretty familiar, who went out there, pretty familiar with the site. And based on the previous first meeting, we made some changes to these plans and address some comments that were brought up by the board. We talked to the fire department regarding access to the site. They looked at the site, and I showed them the access from Main Street off the existing driveway. They were fine with accessing the property with that, and to provide a Knox box there with a key to the gate, and they would have access and could easily get in and out of there. I guess they have a smaller truck that they'd use for this type of site, and they requested that we do some informational meeting with them to let them know how to work with solar and just introduce them to the project. Checked with the police department. They were fine with the project. They had no comments. We replaced the wood chip berm that was proposed. Along with the silt fence, there was going to be silt fence and wood chip berm. We've replaced that with straw wattles, something that will easily be removed at the end of the project. No soils will be removed from the site. There's going to be some grading on the site, but it's minimal grading to smooth out some areas that are pretty steep, and the intent is to do minimal grading and leave all the material on site. There were some discrepancies between the stormwater and the plans showing the width of the road, and the width of the road is going to be 12 feet on the site the whole way. The entire access will be 12 feet wide. Those are requests that we add more detail to the bridge crossing. We did add some detail to the bridge crossing. We added some details showing more erosion control and how the bridge will be constructed in plan view, and then some more detail was added to the detail sheet showing a profile view of the crossing of the wetlands. And that's it. Those are the changes that were added to this plan.
Steve, where's your stabilized construction access? Is that going to be in the driveway or out on Main Street?
It'd be here,
Is there a detail
right at the
on that?
driveway. There's a detail
Back page?
on the back. There is a detail, yep, in the plan set.
Your bridge is 14 feet wide and your road's 12. When you say that those discrepancies are all going to 12, you mean the bridge also?
Well, the bridge has to be slightly wider than the road so they can have something like a curb on the side so that to keep people within that.
And you're going to flare your roadway at that point also?
It could be 12 all the way across and just be slightly wider at the bridge.
I got you, okay. So they stay the same. DEP's comments.
Yep.
A little more detail on that bridge. We've got we've got somewhat of a generic detail, and it doesn't apply specifically to this site. The first drawing does somewhat, but we need a little more detail on that.
Yep, I have some detailed. Hang on a sec. I have some detailed pictures of what we intend to put. I mean, some of these are a little bit bigger than what we intend to put, but I think it gives you a good idea of what it will look like and what the materials are and how it's constructed. There's some pictures in here that show what we intend to do. So I'll submit that.
Take a look at that. I think that the detail that we need, though, is more specific to the site, not
Yep.
really generic to the span.
Yep.
They talk about your alternative. You've got the riverfront area and your bordering vegetated wetland area. You got two crossings. And your crossings, the alternative was dismissed because of the impacts to the riverfront that weren't, those impacts weren't quantified, they weren't discussed.
We could quantify that. It's going along this route here and following the existing cart path over to this point, and you're actually going to be clearing substantially more than here with this alternative.
Again, DEP's comments, so.
Right.
They-
And it's
they
something we could quantify, it's just, we could come up with those exact numbers, definitely.
Okay. Just about where the bridge is, just past the bridge, it opens up into a clearing right there. and
Right
it's-
here?
No, the inside of that loop. Keep going to your left,
Yeah.
a little further, all the way over. Up, now up.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, it'd be nice if that was out there.
Right in here.
Yep.
You're not proposing any work in there, are you?
No.
Then why don't we move the silt fence out closer to the road where your work's gonna be instead of burying it way in the woods? Isn't it shown way up against the tree line?
It is, we could move it.
Yep, that ought to
Um,
be pulled out.
There's going to be work in here as far as clearing trees. That's why I said it it's probably at the edge of work line through there.
Why would you need to clear the trees back beyond where they could have an effect on the solar array? Or am I just misreading something?
I'm trying to think where this is. We're clearing, I guess, through here. Yeah.
Is that the wetlands line?
The wetlands line is right here, right here. We'd be clearing to here. It's going to provide some shading for the array, and that's
If
why we
you're
cleared it.
clearing there, that's all right. It just.
We are clearing there, and it does provide shading to the array, and that's all we were allowed to clear, and we were
Okay,
going, yeah.
all right, all right.
And that's why the silt fence went there.
Natural heritage, rare and endangered species habitat.
That line is right here. So the closest point is greater than 100 feet from that. We're not in it. And my understanding is that if you're not in it and you're a pretty substantial distance away, you're not required to.
I would agree with you, and I looked up online and I verified that the line on the website is very close to where you've got it
Yep.
there. So, I mean, I find that to be consistent, but I'm just telling you that they've got some comments
I
on
saw
it,
that
and they want some
comment.
clarification.
Yep.
Tracy had a question.
That's existing clear. That's an open field right now.
And where's the edge of your clearing for the roadway test?
This is all clear right
Tracy,
now.
Tracy, 1 second. No one can hear you because you're not at a mic. So please, 1 second. I'll go to questions, and then we can pass the mic around. Thank you. And your runoff rates, how do you address their comments relative to your runoff rates?
With the panels being impervious, I have a document that states that DEP considers them pervious.
I've seen it.
And that's what I consider them, and for all my projects, I consider them pervious. And part of the argument is that these have when the panels are placed on the racks, there's an inch space between all of them. So the water runs down for 4 feet, drops in between, so really, they're pervious. They're not impervious. And I think I'd have to contact the reviewer and just clarify that with them. And it's in a document that I have, and I can submit to the board if you would like.
We believe.
That just states right in there.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've
Yep.
seen others like it, so.
Yep.
No, I would agree with you, it's just,
And that's what our numbers are based on.
And we've done 5 landfills where DEP's
Joe?
issued permits.
Mike, please.
Yeah, we've done 5 landfills where DEP's issued permits and considered them pervious.
I'm sure I'll come up with a few more, but does the board have any questions?
Yeah, I had one, and I gotta apologize, I'm not sure where I found it, it was the very first set of notes I made when I first saw it. The road is being made of what? I
It's
picked
gravel.
up. Pardon?
Gravel.
Just gravel, no recycled concrete?
Nope.
Okay, no recycled concrete anywhere on the project?
Nope.
Right, okay, thank you.
I thought I saw in the notes that it said for recycled concrete.
Or recycled, we're not gonna use recycled concrete.
That's, I would review the
I can
notes
change that.
on the plan here.
Yep.
That might be something you want, if the note's still on the drawing, it might be
Take-
something
take
you
it
wanna
off.
clean up, because some contractor's gonna look at it and say, aha.
Yep.
Then you're gonna be hard put to make him tear it out if it says so.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Couple, when we did the site visit, we walked around, we discussed where the connection to the utility lines
Over here.
were gonna go.
Yep.
How that was gonna be done. But I'm just sort of wondering, again, how are you going to get out there with the equipment you need? There are, there's wetland crossings either way. I don't know if those need to be improved to some degree in order to get the equipment out there that you need, or, I'm just curious how you're
Yep.
gonna do it, where you're gonna go, and.
There's some pretty substantial trails out there. I don't know, you saw we walked them, and I think they'd use that to get to where they need to go and use the smallest truck possible, or equipment possible, to get out there.
But that should be definitive, Steve.
Yeah, I
It
was
should
gonna
be
say.
that we know we have 12 feet, we know we're gonna use a certain truck that's gonna weigh X, and that this is gonna handle it, and
Yep.
there's gonna be a spot where we may have to repair, I mean, that should be fairly definitive.
Okay,
You gotta have a pole truck on both sides of that wetland,
right here.
yeah.
Yep.
And so getting to there is, how you're gonna get to there is of the essence. Can you,
To here.
yeah,
There's an
you
easement.
can you come, just simply go out the right of way?
Yep, you
okay.
can. Yep.
Okay.
Dan, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, and back to the bridge, I mean, I would hope that we had more detail. I did notice that there was, in the profile on the plan, there was shown, a substantial amount of fill over the arch. And that one would presume that there's some kind of,
Holding it in. Yep.
wall to retain that. All the pictures I could find had wing walls on the end.
Yep.
And the plan does not show like wing walls, it just sort of, I don't. it was
We can
hard
add
for
some
me to
detail to it.
reconcile the two views.
Yep, we can add the detail to it. And get it from the manufacturer.
Are the footings for those bridges poured in place?
Yep, it would be.
And it looked like they were some distance below the existing grade.
Yep.
I mean, it just seemed difficult to picture how you have your wattles 2 feet from the end of footing, which is 3 feet underground, right?
Yep, we can add some detail to that and describe how we're gonna do it.
Anything else from the board at this time? I apologize, we only have one microphone, we'll have to push it around. Please, yeah, but Steve has it. So Please take the mic before you talk and just identify yourself. Does anybody have any comments? Would anybody like to speak? Sure. Oh, yeah. I just want you to, it's not a speaker, it's just for recording purposes, this. If you'd like, if you'd like.
I'm Tracy Peter Environmental, representing the abutters on Courtney Drive. And I'd like to stick to just the conservation issues. I know there are quite a few other issues that will be discussed at the special permit meeting next Tuesday night. And we found that there's still some outstanding issues. Maybe some of them have been addressed tonight, but there are a few others still outstanding. I remember that we had heard the wetlands weren't flagged at the entrance to the property because the access was changed from, it was going to be further north and you moved it to 136, the Main Street. Oh, which one is the wetland scientist? Oh, okay. You didn't flag the wetlands, the very beginning of the property? Well, you moved it because of the heritage issues, but wetlands weren't flagged.
Guys, you have to pass that over to Chris so that, thank you.
There's an existing roadway coming to the house now. We didn't flag the wetlands along the edge of this. There are erosion controls proposed along the edge of the road, preventing any potential impacts, but again, there's no work proposed within this section.
Okay. Also, there's going to be revegetation. I wasn't sure what was happening with the alteration of the BVW. The notice mentions that there will be 3,253 square feet to be revegetated, but then it also mentions that BVW and Riverfront will be maintained with an altered vegetation composition, and I'm not clear on what that actually means.
Go ahead.
When the project's completed, the wetland areas where the crossing for the utility is occurring, as well as the riverfront area, will be vegetated similar to a right-of-way, like a power line utility corridor. Trees will be cleared, stumped and left in place. There's no wetland fill proposed, so the herbaceous and smaller woody vegetation will remain, but it'll be maintained so it doesn't grow up and impact the overhead wires.
Chris, you know what he's talking? Do you know what he's talking about the line that goes across the transmission line. So they have 12 feet around that line that they'll clear. So right now, it's wooded, but that clearing that around those lines is going to alter the BVW in a way that it changes the vegetation that's there, but does not fill.
But doesn't that include the crossings, though, for the lines? The poles and the crossing?
Yes.
Down at the
Yeah,
bottom,
exactly,
yeah.
that's, yes.
I was just wondering why actual replication wasn't provided for that. Even though it's a limited project, you need to do some kind of a detailed mitigation restoration plan.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, based on what we're doing, we're actually replicating in place. We're just changing it from a partially forested area due to the beaver activity. There's dead trees in some sections of it, so it's more converting it from a partially forested area more into a meadow like you might see along other transmission corridors. I don't know if there are any around here in Newbury that might provide an example, but that would be a similar vegetation. So we're not, it's being replicated in place, so to speak, although we're not impacting the ground herbaceous layer.
And my major concern is that we didn't have anybody check the wetland delineation, and it was done before greening up. And I was concerned that a lot of the herbaceous material was not part of the delineation, and felt that the commission should have had somebody check that over. I think there are 400 flags out there. I mean, that's a lot. Anyway, well, that's a comment to the commission.
Yeah, the only thing I would say as far as the greening, my staff and I are all qualified soil scientists. So we look at vegetation, but we also take into account the soils in the area. So we did quite a bit of plugging into the soil. The soil typically gives you a slightly more accurate boundary than vegetation does. So
Hard to believe you do that much in March, though. There was even ice in the photographs.
we had several visits out there because of that, where there were frozen portions. We went back.
I found it difficult to review this because there weren't any post-development grades. They should have been provided. There's steep relief out there, and there was no proposed construction activity plan or geotechnical survey, at least a cursory one, which I actually did, and found it's all glacial till out there, drumlin material with exposed bedrock. So you're going to have a heck of a time. It seems like it would be definitely a site where you would need a construction plan or, something showing how you're going to install 9,000 solar panels.
The updated plans have a grading plan, which shows some grading, and the racking system can go on at 20% grade. So we've decreased the steep grades to less than 20%, so it's constructible. And the rack posts that go into the ground, if there's ledge or bedrock or large cobbles or stones, they pre-drill it, and then they can put it right into the ground.
But do you have a plan that shows any of that and that construction sequencing? And I saw something about a concrete basin.
There would be one of those. That's for any for when they build the equipment pads. It's a concrete washout area, which you'd have to wash out the concrete trucks. But the posts that these go on are only 2.5-inch diameter. They're small, and that's what the racking goes on.
So a lot of the concern is how are they going to grade that, the steep grades?
Tracy, they did provide a plan that probably you haven't seen yet. There is
A revised plan?
do you have it up here? Do you have a copy of, all right, why don't you show it, please?
Oh, in this report, I provided a copy of the surficial map so you could see the till and the rock outcrops, shallow rock areas.
So I've shown some areas where there'll be, when you see where we're grading, but it's not substantial grading. I mean, it's taking a steep grade and making it a little shallower so that we can build upon it.
I can't hear you. I heard you.
Okay.
The impacts from tree cutting, we're talking about, I didn't put it in, but we're talking about 11 acres. Yeah, I did put it in, 11 acres. And just this past spring, I attended the annual conference of the Mass Land Trust, and they stated, the DOER staff stated that projects that are large solar projects, which are planning on deforesting an area, are actually placed on a low priority list for state funding. So I was just surprised to see this project to begin with. Do you have any comments on that?
Can you repeat the last part, something about being down on the list?
Projects that clear cut more than large acres of landscape are put on a low priority list with the DOER.
I think that's not an accurate description. We're currently in the SREC 2 program, which is the solar incentive, which these projects need to make financial sense. And the process for getting approved for the project to be able to sell SRECs which stand for solar renewable energy credits. There's 4 sectors. There's market sector A, B, C, and managed growth. And any project, I don't think this is too much of an oversimplification, but any project that is above 650 kilowatts and is not on a landfill goes into the managed market allocation, which these projects would fall into. And DOER, their run rate, their goal is something like 130 megawatts per year. So it's accurate to say that they do want more projects on landfills and rooftops, but there's a whole slew of challenges to putting projects on those at those locations. The 2015 managed market allocation was 105 megawatts. So their whole goal for the year is 130. So they're saying that, 105 megawatts will come from projects like this, and then the balance will be rooftops and landfills and smaller behind the meter projects. So it is true that they've redesigned the program. There's sort of a governor to, limit how many of these projects go forward each year, but clearly they understand that these projects are really the driver and make up the bulk of what goes in.
And my greatest concern when I first looked at the notice of intent were the stormwater impacts, and felt that the curve numbers were not, the forested was not correct, that it was more of, there was a lot of leaf litter out there, and I wouldn't consider that fair. However, I also found out that the actual panels were not contributing to, and I say it should be modeled as disconnected impervious area, as say for example rooftop, and it's not. You've just completely, you just use the meadow curve number as your final runoff number.
Yep. And I use the meadow, and walking in out there, in my experience, that is a fair woods. It's not a thickly wooded site. It's pretty, I don't know, sparse, but it's not thickly wooded. And as far as considering the panels as a rooftop, the roof actually is a solid surface over the ground, and water never hits the ground. The water has room to go down and hit the ground beneath the panels. So that meadow beneath the panels is helping infiltrate the water. It's a different situation than you'd have a roof totally covering a surface of land.
And that's, do you have any kind of system so you don't have rills on a steep slope? Won't you have any kind of channelization or any kind of detention areas?
There's no detention in pre equals post. If you look at the CN, having a meadow, and this grass actually grows really well, and underneath the panels, it actually grows the best because it's shaded. So you actually don't get the rills you'd think you'd get. That it grows thicker and better underneath the panels. So you're creating this meadow, which is actually similar to the forest that you're taking out.
Okay, because if you're wrong, you don't meet standard 2 or 3, peak rate attenuation or recharge, if you are wrong with that. Then riverfront area, there's work within the inner 100-foot riparian zone, and it exceeds 5,000 square feet, the 5,000 square foot threshold, and the commission can require a wildlife habitat evaluation if they want, but you're not. Are you going to require that?
I don't know yet.
And there's an existing path located north of the proposed double power line crossing, and you may have already addressed this. Should the alternative analysis have considered this single wetland crossing rather than the double crossing as proposed?
This was the question raised by DEP about that alternative, and as Steve said, we can provide a little more quantification for that.
But you didn't make a change. I can understand why you did it the way you did, but I can see that there's less wetland alteration if you went with the cart path.
Potentially, we didn't quantify it, but we'd have to widen where the cart path is, because it has to be a certain width on either side of the utility. So there's potentially more wetland impact, there's definitively more riverfront impact, and definitively more clearing of vegetation throughout the site with that alternative,
With the other alternative.
which is why we've chosen this one. We believe it minimizes, but as Steve said, we can provide a little additional numbers for that alternative.
And I guess my last item, wildlife habitat, that I guess it's a difference of opinion that I felt that the notice should have at least been sent to the Natural Heritage Program, and I spoke with a staff person there, and they were, I think we're going to call you. I don't,
They sent me an email, and I did call them yesterday, and they have not returned my call yet.
Okay.
I called Glorioso,
yeah.
Lauren Glorioso.
And I wanted to mention there is a potential vernal pool located on the property. That wasn't mentioned in the notice. It's way up in the corner there, in the other watershed, the one that goes under 95, up in the corner.
I'd just like to add with Natural Heritage, I'm pre-qualified for various species with them. I do a significant amount of work with the agency. The rare species habitat, a notice of intent isn't required unless you're physically in the habitat.
Right.
Whether or not you're on the site. If their habitat extends onto your parcel, that's not how they judge jurisdiction. It's if you're physically in there. The
Well, that
project's
was
been
my
designed-
question. I didn't know, because there wasn't any grading, I wasn't sure if you were going to be doing any clear cutting or grading in that area.
No, we will not be touching that area. And I also confirmed this with Dave Paulson from Natural Heritage. He confirmed that, not reviewing these plans, but as long as you're not physically within habitat, you're not required to file with them.
And in closing, I just thought I'd bring this up because it is a concern, that I had pulled a project that you had done at around 559 High Hill Road in Dartmouth. And that site is pretty similar to this in comparison to 136 Main Street in Byfield. And you could take a look at, it's the same type of design with the fence going around it, but you could see in the photograph that the the area that on the south side of the solar field has been, the trees are gone now. They've been cut down in order to better maximize the sun exposure. And I've attached a photo, and I'm thinking that's why
Is this the photo you're referring to?
yeah, it's not very clear. This whole area, if you see it online, it's, I put this is Google Earth. You could really see the way these are taken down, all in here. And I suspect that's why that area is open now, because it's a southern exposure.
You mean the trees have just been taken down to remove the shading effect? Oh, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand, yeah.
But it's, it's just a concern that might happen in the future, and they might be back to clear more trees.
Maybe. They might come back.
Okay. And just my last request is that the commission, let me read it verbatim, that you extend the review in order to address these important concerns for the residents of Newbury.
Thank you, Tracy. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes. Yes, they would. If they were going to clear more trees, it would likely be in the buffers. Well, if it's not in the buffer zone, it's not in a jurisdictional area, they would not have to come back before us. If it's within the buffer zone, meaning 100 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland, or within the riverfront area, then they would be required to come back. Any other, yes, Molly?
If the commission should find in the wetland,
What? Oh,
Marlene Schrader, 1 Anchor Way, Newbury. If the commission should find when they're working around the bridge and so forth in those wetlands, can't you request that they put down mats to run? Somebody brought up the topic of machinery. You can put down mats so that they if they're going to be going over wetlands there,
we have all sorts of conditions that we can
Yes.
impose upon it, but we don't even know definitively what the impacts are yet, and that's why we
Yeah.
requested more
Well,
information.
and
in the
I'm just
process.
saying, as you find that out, if that seems necessary, please consider that.
Sure, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Any other questions or comments from the board? I'm hesitant to close the public hearing tonight because it seems like we have a lot of information
Yeah,
that we need.
my comment would be that we need more information before we get the point where we can condition things.
I would agree.
Approve conditionally.
I would agree.
There's just big list. So, I was prepared to go that way, but I definitely do not want to.
It's too much contingent upon. I don't want to have, I'm not going to take the liability of making those decisions on my own. We'll discuss it as a board.
I would be willing to have another meeting,
I will,
later on this month.
now, let's discuss another meeting. You have some time constraints? When could you be prepared for your next meeting?
If it had to be. Next week would be better, but whatever the board.
I will not be here next week. I won't even be in town next week, so that's not an option for me anyways. Thursday? Could we put a quorum together on Thursday?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm not,
That's- I'll give you
I'm not
time.
tearing my hair out, I'm just thinking.
All right.
Yeah, I can
Fair.
make it.
Well, I don't know, we haven't quite got there yet. We
For
pick
me,
it-
it would have to be an evening meeting. I'm hung up in the morning and afternoon this Thursday.
Okay.
I think, it's gotta be made real clear that when we say detail, we really mean detail. We're not happily hold a special meeting and then find that 40% of the things we've asked you to do have only been half done or not done at all. Doug has been on your case for a while.
Thursday evening, could you make it Thursday evening, Dan? You can?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah,
I can?
I can.
Well, we have a quorum, so let's continue this hearing to Thursday evening time, same time?
Yeah, works for
7
me.
PM this Thursday?
And that would be the 21st, right?
The 21st. Very good.
I just went through the list of what I've noted for.
Please do.
So you'd like more detail on the bridge, site-specific, cross-sectional, construction sequencing, things of those natures, so you can see exactly how it's going to be built.
Mhm.
The alternatives analysis, we're going to provide some calculations for potential impacts from that other alternative that even DEP requested as well as Tracy. Natural heritage, we can provide short summary as to why we feel it's not required. Maybe Warren.
By that time, exactly.
If not, I can speak with Dave. The runoff rates, we can provide a reference to the documentation as to why we feel the curve number is appropriate. The utility connections, we'll provide some sequencing, how they're going to be constructed, show that on the plans. We'll revise the project notes to ensure that no recycled concrete will be used. And as part of the detail for the bridge, we'll provide detail on walls, wing walls, whatever's required to put the material back, and as well as the footings and how they'll be constructed to avoid impacts of wetlands.
You probably covered this, but I would be interested in any construction activity, how you're going to avoid impacting wetlands temporarily. As Marlene said, that is, we have the technology, so let's share with us how you're gonna not make a mess in the building. What's that?
Are you including a geotechnical study?
I'm not hearing you, Tracy, sorry. Definitely.
Are you expecting some type of a study so that we know exactly
Oh,
what
I
they're
would
doing
be
with the
expecting
bedroom?
a narrative. That's a question not for me personally, for the commission. I would think we'd be looking for a narrative primarily. The
Would agree.
sketch or two required, but basically it's a discussion location by location where heavy equipment has to be used, like, you know, line trucks and the cranes and trucks that are gonna get that bridge in, et cetera.
As you prepare your construction sequencing, and then it's fairly easy to develop the narrative just to explain what you're gonna do with it.
And then I believe Borrego's letter to this, August 6th addresses some of the inconsistencies. We had planned on submitting completely revised NOI, but we were just calling out the inconsistencies in that letter. Is that sufficient for the board?
I think it is. I don't see the reason to print more paper. I agree. I agree.
Anything else? That was
I
my
just had a question. Is it,
One second. The only other thing you might want to do is you might want to have a conversation with DEP, with the reviewer at DEP, and maybe some discussion with them might clear up some of their issues. And I can understand why they had so many comments. And so that might be helpful.
I just had a
Yes.
question. I briefly heard something about drilling or blasting. Is it drilling and or blasting, or just drilling? Just drilling? Okay. Your reference to the document, the runoff document, I don't have a copy of that. Do you have an extra? Or can you give me the reference now?
Anything else from the commission? Did we leave out anything that you can?
Thursday meeting, 7?
Thursday meeting, 7 o'clock. Same location, right here. Yes, please. I think we're all set, so. No. Nope, we don't. Nope, we don't.
Good point.
We missed it by an hour. Good point, Susan.
When do you come back, Doug?
Following Saturday.
Pardon me?
So the following Saturday, so that's the, I don't know, 28th.
30th, right? 23rd and 7th is 30.
I will be back on the 30th.
Well, Saturday and Sunday aren't negotiable days to hold
Nope.
a public meeting, I wouldn't think.
Doug, I think Tracy has another comment.
One second, Tracy.
We're kind of between a rock and a hard place, aren't we?
Well, we're not.
Oh, no, we're not.
We're just trying to
no,
be
I-
accommodating.
Yeah, we're trying to
Yeah.
not be an impediment, but not a lot we can do.
We can post an 8 o'clock, but that's, I don't know what else is going on that evening yet either. I have to check the schedule and see if there's other meetings going on. I mean, if you want to check that out.
I guess so. I guess we ought to.
So late.
Appreciate your assistance.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, what is the deadline that's being imposed here? It seems like 48 hours is awfully fast turnaround for all the things that they need to provide.
I agree that there's a lot of work to do, but that's on them, so.
Well, I don't think it's
the-
also,
the
it may
40
not be fair on you guys.
The 48 hours is a posting. I don't think, I'll speak for myself personally, I don't see issues here that can't be resolved. So it's a matter of getting the information to us that we need, that we know that should support their argument. And so it shouldn't take very long to review. If that information doesn't support their argument, well, then that's on them, and then there's further delay. And again, that's not my problem.
Can I ask you guys,
But we need
what is the deadline that you're trying to meet?
On August 30th is the next managed market allocation that I was discussing before. So that's, you need your permits in order to apply for the managed market.
There was a 7:15 meeting posted for Thursday.
All ready for here.
For town hall.
Okay. I'm not gonna take time now to try and figure out how to get another meeting and where to go somewhere else, and I mean, this is just something we're gonna have to discuss over the next couple of days, I guess. At
How
this
will we
point.
know? The meeting will be posted?
Yeah, we'll have to post it.
Yeah. So right now it's not Thursday?
Right now, it will not be Thursday.
So are we talking after you return from your vacation then?
I don't know yet. If the rest of the board wanted to meet, they can certainly meet without me. I'm not indispensable here.
I'm not in favor of that.
I guess I'm hearing that
Well, the stickers,
it's gonna be an issue now because, well,
Well, shouldn't have all of this been addressed at tonight's meeting anyway? Was some of this stuff that you had already asked at last meeting not addressed tonight?
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
A lot of this information should have come
Should have
forward
come
already.
tonight.
I agree, yes.
So now we're.
I've
we're
asked for it
kinda
more than
catering
once.
to their bad, information.
No, this board would do the same for anybody. I'm
Okay.
not trying to be more accommodating to these folks than anybody else. But we have a taxpayer in town, this is a private project, it's not a big commercial project, not a town project, so I'm somewhat sensitive to that. I don't feel as though I have to jump through their hoops, but if we can do it without rolling over, then that's fine, I don't have a problem doing that. It's something that we do in this town all the time.
I know, and I agree with you. I just hear from a few of the board members that these questions have been asked at the last meeting and that they were curious to why it wasn't answered at this meeting.
Mhm.
Okay,
I am too, I am too, again, it's been put to them more than once.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I,
Doug,
I've had a
we
concern.
would be in favor of the first week in September, if that worked for the board.
All right. That's
what
good.
have we said?
What was said is we're looking towards we're looking at the first week of September now.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone towards the end of September.
How
Not that
about-
that matters, but early September is fine.
Second, third, or fourth? That's the first and third, that could be selectmen's meeting on the second, so we're gonna have to be careful. On the third, you got, okay.
Yeah, they would be the second, we're the third, so
There's
they're
the second,
and
fourth.
fourth.
Okay.
There's gotta be somebody on the first.
Labor Day, so no, there's no one, yeah.
Well, no, that's Tuesday. Labor Day's Monday. Isn't
But
it?
the first is Monday,
The first is Monday.
yes,
Okay, so the second
Is-
would be not a selectmen's meeting.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So it may be somebody else's. Pardon?
Second is not open, that is booked already.
Okay.
The third is planning board, is the fourth open?
Fourth is open.
All right. Can we put together a quorum on September 4th at 7 o'clock?
Can we do it earlier?
We can do it earlier.
I prefer to do it earlier.
Can the members get here at 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
An hour earlier, is that Thursday? So we're talking about Thursday, September 4th at 6 PM here in this room.
That work for you guys?
One other thing.
But the 21st was my birthday and I was gonna miss it. We
I-
had a decent dinner.
Since we were unable to attend the site visit, we didn't know the time to be there exactly, and we missed each other somehow. Wondered if I could have a site visit for the abutters.
I'm going to leave that up to the owner and the applicant. I don't care if you have a site visit or not. I mean, I don't mean it that way.
Okay.
That's,
We don't have a dog in that fight.
Right,
That's what I'm
right.
saying. That's not our decision. We don't own the place and we're not the applicant,
Right.
so.
But we were kind of left out. We felt we were very left out with
wouldn't
that.
mind
We
going.
were all there waiting, and nobody came, and
I
we,
thought they took a special walk afterwards, after
Yeah.
we left. Didn't you
Not-
take a second walk? I
We-
thought so.
We did, yeah.
just not the whole property. They took a walk just behind their properties. Right, I was not there.
Again, Tracy, it's not the board's issue, so if you can work that out with the applicant, I mean, it's not something I can order.
Okay.
And you don't have really the right to go onto the property as a continued hearing or anything like that. So again, it would be up to the applicant and the owner.
Okay, I just,
Can I just add
Yeah.
to that? So we did have a brief discussion with the owner, and we had some questions behind my house. We didn't cross into the property, but behind my house, and we're looking at elevations. Many of the questions we had said, you need to talk to Borrego. But I do think that he would probably let us back on, but the question goes to the Borrego folks, are you guys willing to do a site walk with us?
Sure. So we had an informational meeting last week, just for the record, which was which we chose to do, and invited all of the neighbors and abutters, and we held that at the library on Wednesday evening, and it was fairly well attended, and we listened to the neighbors' concerns, and we've addressed all of those concerns, and I think it's more appropriate for the Board of Selectmen meeting. But sure, we can, with the landowner's permission, we can schedule a site walk.
Do you have a card or something that you wanna leave with them?
sure, I
already
will.
I have the contact information.
Could you pass the word to the town? Because frankly, I'd like to take another walk through there
Okay.
myself.
There should be one point of contact for them to get a hold of and then distribute the information to the abutters. So Tracy, if you have a card, why don't you give it to one of these gentlemen?
Sure.
And then coordinate that, if it gets approved, coordinate that with Tracy, and then she can filtrate the information.
And maybe
out to the
pass the
abutters.
word to Susan, so,
Or just email the commission when you've
yeah.
set your time and
Let
you.
the commission
All right.
know, yeah.
I just have one concern. I just didn't know how to explain it to you. You're looking at the plan. You don't see any grading. You're just seeing solar panels. And it's such an irregular, it's just a bunch of outcrops or erratics. I just can't understand why you can't have just some kind of a write-up or a plan on how they're going to level the area off, and how are you going to get from a forested area to all of a sudden you're going to get to grass, prairie grass.
They did show it, Tracy. They've got a cut and fill, and he flipped to that page at one point.
Oh, okay, it's
But
new
he's got
then.
Yes, he's got he's got his existing and his proposed lines on a plan, as you'd normally see them.
But is there a
Proposed lines in dark.
construction sequencing, something
No,
that
there is not
describes
that,
how
and
they're
we need
about
that.
That's
Okay.
what we're
Okay.
asking him to produce.
All right, thank you.
I agree with you, totally.
I think we're all set on that one. We're gonna wrap that up, folks.
It is Thursday, September 4th at 6 PM here at Town Hall. Yep.
So it is my recommendation to the board that we grant a continuance to Thursday, September 4th at 6 PM.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Guys all set for your next? Yep. We have a continued notice of intent to install a solar array system at N.A. Nichols Realty Trust.
Gonna have to give him a couple minutes. Yeah. Give him 5 minutes.
I'm sure, did they give a new plan for this one as well? I mean, for Middleborough?
I don't think there was a new plan for Middle Road, because there was no grading. I don't think we had a grading plan on it. You did it, did resubmit? Yeah, gotta look at the date then. I think the others were 7-something, so the 8/6 date, yeah. That's a Middle Road. Might be over here. All set? All right, I'll start this one more time. We have a continued notice of intent to install a solar array system from N.A. Nichols Realty Trust on 4 Middle Road.
project that we're doing, and it's been before the board and submitted previously. It's between Route 1, Middle Road, and Highfield Road, with the utility easement cutting down the middle of the property. And I'll just go through we got comments at the previous meeting, and I'd like to go through those comments and how we address them. There was a comment from Doug regarding the 100-year floodplain and the night we had the meeting, the FEMA line was revised. So we have changed that on the plan. It was at elevation 8, now it's at elevation 10. And that line now goes adjacent to this. We are not in it with this array. This array is well out of it. The line goes through the middle of this array. So that has moved. We are going to put these in the floodplain. They can be put in the floodplain. They're going to be above the elevation that the water will ever get. They're approximately 30 inches above the ground. And because this is the area that this is, where it's tidal, we're not required to do compensatory storage. And we're not really filling much anyway in that area. They're just the small 2.5-inch piles being put in the ground. Access to Route 1. We have access to Route 1. We don't need any additional access. I talked to District 4, and we're not required to submit a new permit. This use is pretty much no traffic, and that's why they would require a new one if there was an increase in traffic from the project. Once this is built, there'll be almost no traffic, so they weren't concerned with changing any access permits. I checked with the fire department, and they looked at all the access points and the roads, and they were fine with the way it's set up. And once again, they would use a smaller truck to access this site. So they felt there was sufficient room for maneuvering and getting in and out of the sites. And again, they would ask for a Knox box at the gates. I checked with the police department. They were fine, had no comments with the project. Again, with this project, we're changing the wood chip berm to straw wattles so that they can be removed easily after the project's complete. We did a site walk. Everybody walked all the arrays. It was a long walk, actually. And I think everybody's pretty familiar with, if you were out there, where this is going to go. I see that all soils will remain on site. There's some small areas here that'll be regraded that are steep, but these areas and this area is not proposed to be regraded. And if you're out there, it's pretty flat. And that's about it for revisions that were done to the plans. And looking at the DEP website, they didn't have any comments for this project.
None on this one. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, when we first walked in, the first place we parked, we
Right
walked
here.
up the hill.
Yep.
And it opened up to a field, and that was a pretty barren field. There wasn't an awful lot growing there. Can we condition this in some way that it will grow stuff? If it doesn't grow with what's there, which I think is highly probable, then bring in some topsoil, so enough topsoil so something will indeed grow. Is that unreasonable?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I think in their own permit, they talk about taking a certain amount of soil samples and making sure that they meet a certain specification. I assume it's the same for this site as it is on Bass Shore, and
It
you'll
would be.
modify the soils if you need to modify them,
Yep. And
or amend them, I should say.
we would do that in this area here. This area, I mean, we do it adjacent to the road, but that's what they see now. I don't know how much into this area we would do, as we're not.
Can we just clarify, are you referring to the area of Route 1 or Middle Road?
I'm talking about the Middle Road site, yeah.
So when you drive in, it kind of you would think that the panels are all going to go in that flat, barren area.
Yeah.
But in fact, the land, that's not part of the lease area, so we wouldn't actually have permission to improve that area unless we expanded our lease. So the landowner who has he also owns the house to the south, his son does, and he wants a clear, they've kind of disturbed that earth to create what they refer to as a backyard, for lack of a better word. And they don't want any panels there, and they sort of like it the way it is.
I'm referring to this area here.
Yeah.
If
That-
you're not putting panels someplace, I'm not sure we have any right to ask you to do anything with it.
Sure.
But this, you certainly, I think we got something to say about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least I personally am not hung up on this part. I'm thinking more like where the panels are going.
Outside your fence and outside your work area, I'm not concerned with.
Okay.
Those are existing conditions on his property, and I'm not, I wouldn't be.
Not our job, man.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be, I don't think I'd be conditioning that way. I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Fine with that.
What about the tires that are out there?
I think that we may anticipate that where that is the site of an old junkyard, that from time to time you could come up with something that more resembles a car than earth. And if you do that, we're not asking you to go look for trouble, but if you find something like that, we want it pulled out and disposed of properly, not just reburied in the soil.
Okay. But we don't, I think that was probably in this area here. I don't,
Along the walk, you could see them.
okay.
There are some drumlins out there that weren't left by the glaciers.
Okay.
It'd be nice if they're gone.
We're not gonna dig for them, but if we find them,
And that's
Yeah.
that's our
what we're
point.
saying, I
Yes.
think,
If you could,
yeah.
if you could see them, they should be gone.
Don't rebury them, please.
Any other comments or concerns?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of the same. I did want to actually look at that note. And I'm just sort of curious if this will be followed to the letter, because it does seem like, particularly on the area near Route 1, that could be quite expensive to, I think it says it would come up with 2 inches of topsoil. Basically it'll be amended to that degree. And topsoil for areas seeded with solar farm feed mix, depth 3 inches minimum, pH, organic matter. I mean, basically it was just a bunch of rocks. So to get to this specification, are you,
we have to do something because we need the grass to grow there. So that,
well, it just, it seems like it would be a lot of work to do this. I just would like to make sure that that is met.
our intent is to get grass to grow afterwards, so what, we've done it on other sites where we had to bring in soil. And I think it's probably just this area. The other areas had a lot, yeah, and that's a smaller area. This is growing really well. This is growing okay. This is growing pretty well. That's not so good.
That was a
It's-
parking lot. It was a dirt
Yeah,
parking lot.
with something
You know,
growing up through it now. So
Well, it's
we'd
been there
have
so
to,
long with no activity that you've got
Right.
weeds in it, but I don't think it would it wouldn't give you a thick, lush
Nope.
solar mix under there.
and we'd have to do
certainly.
something so that we want, because we want it to be grass underneath. We want it to look decent.
Dan, any other questions? Any other questions or concerns? Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Well, it would seem like we're at the position where we've got, if we have any odds and ends, and I'm not sure we do, they could be conditioned and this could be approved.
I would agree.
I
I
don't
didn't
think
hear
we-
anything here tonight that's,
Pardon me?
I didn't hear anything
I
tonight.
didn't hear anything scary, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be okay with, yeah.
Is
I'd
that
be okay with approving it, actually.
Is that a
I don't-
motion to
yeah.
approve?
Okay, motion to approve.
I'm not trying to feed it to you,
No,
I'm
no,
just
no, no,
asking.
no.
Okay, motion to approve?
No, yes,
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Want to talk about conditions?
Any special conditions, other than the car part mitigation that we talked about a few minutes ago? Any special conditions on this particular property?
Vegetation, soil amendments, just,
Okay, so that's already listed in there.
it's in there, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Is it in,
It's actually one of the notes on the second page of the plan.
oh, okay. Okay, are we gonna add soil or just throw some fertilizer on it? A soil amendment usually means you improve it, but you don't bring in more.
I think that they would likely have to amend it, because if you just throw fertilizer on top of that, eventually the fertilizer will flush out and be used up, and you're gonna end up with poor soil again.
Right, but my point is amend, does that mean bring in more soil? I don't think it does. I think it means add fertilizer. I could be wrong.
John, it's
Amend-
Huh?
it's pretty good, actually. You know, what's on the plan, I think addresses that.
You think it's good enough, Dan? Okay.
Yeah.
But it could be pretty onerous for these guys to do it in certain locations, I think. As long as they're prepared to do it.
Oh.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. That's right. We try to process as quickly as we can. And I'll call them when it's ready.
Yes, please.
Other possible condition, again, I sort of looking for the recycled concrete, but I
I don't know how.
see it if that is in
No
there.
reason. Gotcha.
I'm sorry, how long? It's 10 business days from the date it is issued.
The day after.
Well, date after, yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Okay. You're welcome. We're all set. Take care.
You don't anticipate talking about the solar arrays anymore tonight?
No, we're done with the solar arrays for tonight. As soon as it quiets down, and we'll give Steve a minute to pick up. And we have a request for a determination of applicability to replace a deck in kind from Thomas Fordham at 13 6th Street. Good evening, Tom. How are you? We should take this and send it down, and Susan should keep an eye on that one. That's the one with the order in it, so. The order is underneath the front cover of that. Well, you got it. Good evening, Tom. How are you? Tom, quick explanation about what you intend to do?
Basically, it's a deck goes across the front of the house. It's been up there for roughly 20-plus years. It's needed
tube, that will be reused, and that's the rest. I think you have pictures of,
I have what you provided.
I thought I gave,
I do have a drawing.
Whatever's in there is what we're doing now. There's some pictures on there on the front cover.
I see, okay. Yep, they were hiding.
I'm recusing myself. I'm recusing, Susan. I wasn't thinking, as I do so well.
they're two separate pictures, that's all.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's all cantilever except for that one post.
Exactly, there's one sonotube that's gonna be reused. I did have a structural engineer come out and look at it, said it was fine.
Good stuff, okay.
Yeah.
Is that over in this corner?
Yes.
Yes.
That would be that, yeah. Right, we appoint Ned. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm recusing.
Anybody's here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? I'll close the public hearing, entertain a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Tom. Tom, you've done the drill before, I guess, but 10-day appeals period starts the day after the postmark on the envelope that you either pick up or you receive it from.
Okay, fine,
So,
no problem.
yeah.
I'm still gonna get a building permit anyways.
Okay.
Can I do that in the process, Doug, or do I, what
The-
do you recommend,
Where you've got a negative determination, the commission can sign off on your project and you can work at risk. If you don't want to work at risk, you wait the 2 weeks of the 10-day appeals period, and then the commission can sign off on the permit, and then you know you're free and clear.
okay, I'll wait for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Tom, take care. We have a notice of intent to repair an existing water control structure in an on-site pond from James Miller at 14 Fruit Street. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, how are you all?
Wonderful, thank you. How are you?
My name is James Miller, I live at 14 Fruit Street in Byfield. I have an existing cement concrete dam that has had the northern abutment eroded over the past few years, and my pond is now turning into a frog pond, where it used to have fish and whatnot. It was originally constructed 20 to 30 years ago by Ron Pearson, and I just would like to get this abutment repaired. Heavy equipment will be wheelbarrows and human labor to carry the rock down and place it where the abutment needs to be repaired.
Just looks like at some point, Jim, your control structure got flanked and it just took the soil out on either side of it and lowered the elevation on you.
And hasn't washed it yet. A couple of those NOAA floods we had a couple of years ago were pretty.
So how much stuff do you think you gotta put back in there?
Well, it's at an angle going up, and it's a total area about 6 feet in height, 6 to 8 feet long. And
Just sort of point out, I mean, you see dimensions here, but what,
okay, closer. Here's the existing dam here.
yeah.
Here is where the abutment has eroded out. And it comes down here at about 30 inches and sort of goes up. And I want to fill that in a little bit more to take it up to the height of the dam. This is kind of vegetated in a little.
I mean, it would seem real important to me to put enough stuff there that it doesn't blow out again. Because if it blows out again, all that stuff's gonna end up somewhere else. So I don't know how you determine when to stop, really.
When it,
It will be have to be mounted, obviously, and the base will have to be broad enough to support that 30 inches. And probably a little on either side so that it can be, soil can put on it and skunk cabbage put back on it and whatnot. They're both there.
I mean, there's ways to do it, I think, just sort of thinking about it myself. I don't know if this is in there whatsoever, but had some bigger boulders
Some good size, you know.
and then some fabric and then, stuff to kind of contain the the smaller fill that you put in there. I don't know how important these details are.
I think they're very important.
You'd like to, I think whatever you do, you'd like to think it wasn't gonna happen.
Well, I'm gonna have to, it's gonna cost me some money, I'm going to want it done, you know.
How far removed from, vehicular access is this?
Oh, it has to be 40, 80,
The ways.
over 100 feet anyhow from,
from Fruit Street, but it's in his backyard, so it depends on how you value your lawn, what kind of access you have. But it's certainly, it is able to be reached from your upland area around the pond in an area that is now an improved lawn surface. So it's really, it's a backyard pond is really what it is. Jim, when this thing overtopped before, was the weir plugged? Were the
yes.
boards, stop boards in the weir?
Boards were,
So
yeah.
that's why it went over the top maybe.
over the top.
All right, a little more monitoring and maybe pulling these things when, or not even using them at all might alleviate that overtopping.
It would do that. I've also thought about putting a drainage pipe in, that would come out so that if there's an overflow, it would go through there.
Before you made a change like that, though, we'd want to see that in the plan.
Oh, well, then I won't do that. Well, it's just a thought,
So you got a 30-inch divot, 6 feet wide, and undetermined breadth.
Right, I would go at least as wide as it was, and if not a little wider.
Have you talked to anybody about what the composition should be, or the
Well,
material?
it was just dirt originally,
Yeah, that's what the,
and that's
That-
why it's
right.
And, my plan is boulders, good size rock, it's not going to wash away.
my advice is you get a pretty good, diversification size-wise, not all the same size.
Oh, no, start off with a large rock,
Well, you get,
and build a wall, at the dam site parallel to it, and then to the pond side, come in with more rock.
You know,
Build a good-sized wall around it.
Jim, it might be good to start out with something smaller and have your core smaller gravel and start graduating up, and then cover it with some cloth, and then put your a type of fabric so that if water gets inside this, it doesn't take the core right out. So it doesn't wash the core out through the stone you have. And then if you put some stone to hold that, and then I still think that you want to go with the topsoil and the turf on the top of it. I have seen that do an amazing job up on River Road, or River Street. There's a dam up there that is nothing but an earthen dam, and it's amazing what that will hold, just some well-established turf.
what Doug's talking about is called a filter fabric.
Filter fabric, and
Right,
I would
it'll
get
allow
this-
water to pass, but not the fines.
And I would get this where, Home Depot or something?
Home Depot may have it. Most of your lawn and gardens will have it. Any of your landscaping companies will have it.
A.H. Harris up in Portsmouth, they have it. Ravinius has it.
Manufacturer's name would be Marafi. Marafi.
Rapid.
MIRAFI, the primary manufacturer of this kind of fabric.
All right.
I mean, I don't know, do we have enough detail here?
If you were standing on the site, I think you'd feel as though you did. It's relative.
been there?
I have. I went out into the backyard, I took some pictures. You know, I've had a couple of discussions with Jim, so I don't see it as that big a project. It's not, Any other questions or comments from Jim? Would anybody like to speak on the project? I'll close the public hearing, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Is there any conditions that you want me to impose upon this? Do you want me to be somewhat suggestive in the way that we described putting this thing back together?
Yes.
Okay, all right. You'll get it then. Good enough, no problem.
Yeah, I think we should give a little guidance of what the composition should be.
I can do that. I can do that without too much trouble.
Is there some rule of thumb on an earthen dam, just like how steep,
It depends
how
what the
gradual
materials.
the slope might have to be in order for it to support itself?
Well, I might go to the engineer, but I agree with you that it wants some width and it wants some mass to it. I don't think it wants to be peaked very high, and I think it needs to have some round to the top. Again, a good mass to the top of it.
I would say just looking at the picture there, I don't know if I want to go any steeper than 3 to 1. And I'm not sure what the slope is on it, or what it was before it got washed out.
It was about 30, it was flush with the top of the dam. But it didn't come out, it wasn't 3 feet wide. For that first, it comes out and because it expanded like so, as it came north of the dam.
Do you know what that slope is now?
Pardon?
What that slope is now?
Oh, no, I couldn't tell you what it is. I don't really even get down there often.
It's fairly gentle there, and it drops fairly gentle off the backside also. It's,
So it's less than 3 to 1?
you know, it's been a while since I've been out there. I'd have to say yes. I mean, if you made me answer, I'd say yes. It is less than a 3 to 1
Yeah,
slope.
yeah, I wouldn't go any steeper than that. Use some fast-growing vegetation to hold it all together.
Basically, it's different kinds of grasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you want to go with it, maybe have a discussion with the guy at the yard and see what they've got for a good tough turf to put up on there. Good grass seed. But I'll try and help you out, Jim. I'll condition that. When we write the order of conditions, I'll see if I can condition that to give a little bit of guidance.
Wonderful. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're very welcome. Have a, we'll get this order out to you. I don't know if you heard me speak to others, but the day after the postmark on the envelope is the first day of a 10-day appeals period. So just about, and it's 10 state working days, so just about 2 weeks after you receive the order in the mail, you can start your project. Now, the one thing that you will have to do is go down and record the order of conditions. It goes to the Salem Registry of Deeds, it gets recorded. When you're done with your project, you come back in, you tell the commission you're done, we go out and inspect it. If you did what you said you were gonna do, we issue a certificate of compliance. That is then used to remove the order from the deed, and you're done, you're clean again. All right, any questions on that?
I'll send you some instructions.
Please,
so-
because I've forgotten that already.
Okay,
It's all right.
All right,
fair enough.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Good evening.
Yep.
Yep. Yep, you were it.
Contrary to popular belief, this is nothing more than just to Ross had developed. For 39 Fordham, you guys looked at them and we went through all the detail and all that, and basically as part of the continued appeal process, we produced a stamped set. And it's basically identical in nearly every way, really identical to what you already have. But I just wanted to kind of, and you should have received a copy. I don't know if you want a second set. You would have gotten the one set as a party.
I haven't got it yet, but I'm, no, I don't, we haven't seen it yet, a stamped
Okay.
plan, full-size stamp plan.
Yeah, it was mailed out from the attorneys, but I'll
Okay.
leave this with you.
Okay.
And actually, you may have received it by email.
Okay.
It
That-
comes
that-
as a PDF, we sent it as a PDF.
Then we have it.
And there was a follow-up with paper though, so.
We might as
I-
well keep these though and stamp them.
We'll keep this, but I don't remember the follow-up copy, but.
Right,
it's-
so, basically, we also, it's also includes an updated survey, so it's been converted over to 88 datum. I don't know if you guys have any questions, but essentially, the engineered, stamped version affirmed everything that Ross had put on the earlier plans. I mean, the only difference is I think we had said 230 square feet, and I think we're actually at an impact area slightly less than that, 222 square feet. So 8 square feet of difference. And part of that may be because we actually
Yeah, you went up.
this area. And yeah, so we just wanted to kind of informally get these in front of you. I mean, I think you guys have already reviewed this project as it's presented here
We have.
in other forms without stamp. So there's a structural plan that goes along with it, which is identical pretty much to what you've seen and the existing conditions.
I think the only difference is that the location of the two islands that I put in to support the stairway down, that was changed. But it still uses two pylons, it's just in a slightly different location. I think that was about the only.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a minor requirement, but if you guys feel like you need to do anything in terms of decisions on it, we can put it on a future agenda.
I don't think there's a decision, I think the decision was already made
Right,
at
no,
a
that's-
previous meeting, and now we're getting a stamped copy other than
Right.
an unstamped copy. It's pretty simple, it's that simple.
Proper.
Yeah.
In terms of the presiding officer.
A proper plan.
Proper.
Okay.
And we will find out what happened to the actual paper copy that was mailed, because all the parties should have received that. So, somewhere maybe there's an envelope, right? But I don't know if you guys have any questions, but I mean, the plan was done by DCI, Steve Sawyer and Edward Chandler. Steve does real nice work, and, the one thing he said when he saw Ross's, he said, why can't I just stamp this then? But, he put it into CAD, he put it to scale, double-checked all the measurements.
Good for you. Congratulations. Quite a plan. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this
No,
plan.
this is
It's
way beyond what
unprecedented.
we normally
It really is
get.
unprecedented.
Yeah.
And when you start to contemplate the impacts, they get down to negligible.
The other thing that's interesting about this is that we were able, at least with the survey, is to identify existing vegetation. But you can also look at it in relationship to the 2005 survey, other than the fact that we don't have a 27-foot contour because of the change in whatever it is, MABD.
The 1 foot change.
BBD or whatever it is apparently the 26, 27 contour line is almost identical. I mean, the 26 replaced the 27 because of the change. And it sort of confirms too that over that period of time, there's been very little real change on the lot, which is something I think we've demonstrated pictures and everything else we've done, but it's interesting to see. It's nice to know that we were that close.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, when you guys saw in the NEPA filing, we presented
Well, you had a picture of a log that
Yeah.
was, I don't know, you
Yeah,
had
but
two
what
pictures,
was
they
it
were like
after,
8
right.
years apart.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you had so much tomatosis there, the vegetation, if that was an active dune, it would have buried it a long time ago.
I mean, the one thing that you see different, if you go back and look at the pictures, is that the amount, the area of beach grass is diminished and the area of tomatosis increased dramatically.
Interesting.
Which is another, I think, good indicator that it's transitioning into what we call back new
Mhm.
environment.
Yeah, and, you know, it just affirmed everything. I mean, really, when you look at elevations didn't really change. Where the veg is on the lots changed a little bit. It's been a long time, and we talked about that in the media filing, and it's, you know, it was just kind of, it was nice to see that we didn't get any surprises whatsoever.
The only dilemma at this point is that we got nobody up there that listens.
Well,
That's another story.
maybe that will change.
That's another story.
Yeah, maybe that will change. Anything else, any comments? It's just an acceptance of a plan, so
Yeah.
then we will accept this plan and place it on file with the other.
Thank you.
Thank you. Put this with it? Sure.
8:30, you guys are pretty much there.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
So you have something about stormwater. that you can-
Yep, if John is ready, we have a little something about stormwater if you want to.
We have certificate of compliance.
Oh, that's right, we do. We've got another, one more piece of business.
Sorry, I almost adjourned you guys.
No,
No, you didn't, not yet.
you can walk out.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good night. We have a request for a certificate, a partial certificate of compliance from James Waldron of 9 Basin Front. He wants a structure only. I went down and he's not done with his vegetation, revegetation, but he is under some pressure from the bank to get a certificate of compliance so they can release the final payment. So I went down and I did an inspection of the house today, and the house was done in compliance, not just substantial compliance. They did a great job. It looks good down there. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we grant a partial certificate of compliance on the structure only.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I did not read my agenda, so I didn't even know we were gonna do this, and I couldn't believe that with this other stuff going, that we would have
Time
time
for
to
it.
get to this. So, I don't even have my copy of the
Okay.
rules and regs.
I've just
Let-
been carrying it forward too, because we haven't addressed it yet.
Yeah, right.
So
No,
I didn't want,
yeah.
I wanted to placeholder.
Well, here's what I would suggest. Let me just very briefly go through the changes of this from what we had before that was done, what, 4 or 5 years? 4 years ago, maybe, 3 or 4 years ago. And the rationale behind the changes. And then, I know, Ed, you had some comments that you gave to Doug.
Yep.
If anybody else has, everybody has copies of it. So let me throw this out. Would it be appropriate that people contact me that have issues with it directly? We talk about it with them, and then we get it back out to everybody.
That might
And
be,
that might be the most efficient way instead of, you know,
we'll send you our comments on it.
yeah.
Yeah,
No.
that works.
Either send or call me and we'll get together, or however the individual person with comments wants to play it.
Okay.
You know, that's, the differences from before are not huge. First, the main thing is that rather than have these rules apply only to the MS4 region, I said, this is silly, let's do the whole town, okay? Most of which we had to do anyway, because guess what? The major driving force in this is the DEP Stormwater Management Handbook, Stormwater Handbook. So 98% of this, of the rules that we're promulgating are already out there in the DEP, and we gotta do it anyway. So, you know, comment I got back from Steve Sawyer was, yeah, well, this is what we do anyway, so, you know, what's new? So that's one issue. Another one is that it includes upland projects as well as wetlands projects. The DEP Stormwater Handbook is limited to wetlands. Okay, it does not deal with upland sites. This would deal with upland sites. And that only makes sense because eventually it's got to get to a wetland somehow, one way or the other. Okay? And again, most people do this no matter what. A few odds and ends of changes. One is that the DEP rainfall intensity figures are way off base. They're using TP40 that comes back from the early 60s, back when they called it the Weather Bureau. It's not even the National Weather Service. Especially on the larger storms, it's way out of date. It gives us a 100-year storm of 6 inches and some change. The new data out of Cornell, who is doing that under contract with NOAA for this region, northeastern U.S., the Maritimes, Canadian Maritimes, is 9 and some change. So there's a 50% difference for the 100-year storm. The smaller return storms are less different. They're in the same ballpark. It's probably not worth arguing about because who knows anyway. This isn't watchmaking. This is somebody's best guess, and guess maybe too nice a word. I mean, hydrology is not an exact science. I get it. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think 9.2 or 9.3 inches really is a reality. Could be anywhere from 8 to 12. So that's one thing. Another one is DEP calls for, I think, a 300-foot distance from the upper reach of the watershed where you are in sheet flow as opposed to the shallow concentrated flow, and then you go into a ditch or a pipe or something. Smart Money today says that 50 to 100 feet is a better number. I chose 50 just because it will tend to kick up the volumes a little bit by virtue of it increases or decreases the time of concentration. It's going to flow so fast. If it only has to flow 50 feet instead of 300 feet,
It's going to get there quicker.
it's going to get there quicker, and which means you know. So that's pretty common sense. There were some issues that I had with removal of nitrogen and phosphorus. First of all, they're a real bitch to remove. It's hard, it's expensive, and guess what? While we have impaired waters all around us, not for that, it's for pathogens, which in all probability come from septic systems. So, you know, why put people through that when the big problem is something else? And just the way it was crafted, as near as I could tell, you were never going to be able to achieve it. It was one of those things, you have to totally remove it, but every one of your BMPs gives you, you know, 50%. Now you get 50% or 50%.
50,
you know?
yeah.
So it's a case of you'll never get there from
Cut
here.
it in half.
Yeah. The subdivision rules and regulations are revised, and we will have to see that they are totally in sync. Martha everybody has been given their things to do, so I've been waiting over a year to get it sorted out. The technical part we finished up well over a year ago, the planning board did. The administrative sections, Martha had some issues, but nobody would let her work on them. They kept giving her jobs. Get out a grant application for this, sell the yellow school, you know? So, you know, there's only one of her, and this, the people that wanted her to do those other things outranked me by considerable. So, anyway, she is working on it now, so I would hope that we can get the two in sync. Of the two, that one is really dreadful. It just is awful. The subdivision rules and regulations are,
I think we looked at them
They're
before
up.
when we were contemplating
Yeah.
that subdivision across from the state police station.
they
We
are
had-
an embarrassment.
we had a lot of
They
comments,
are,
yeah.
you know, criminally negligent or something. We gotta fix those. The rest of this, I didn't change a great deal. Basically, and this is why it was so insane to want a consultant. Basically, we said, except for 2 or 3 things which I mentioned, do it like the state says. So when we hire a consultant, what we're doing is we're hiring them on our nickel to review the DEP's
State
regulations.
regulations.
You know, how smart is that?
Seems like a
Jesus
little bit of
Christ.
a waste.
Huh?
Seems like a little bit of a waste.
Wouldn't you think? Yeah.
John, when this, when we voted at town meeting to establish a stormwater commission or committee,
Yeah.
was that was how the process
I
was done?
don't think so. It started with, and this was a mandate from the '03 permit,
Okay.
MS4 permit.
Yep.
And this was before my time, but as I understand it, we had to get legislation in place. That was a requirement to forbid illicit discharge
Mhm.
and provide punishment for the perpetrators. In other words, provide a way of making people stop.
Mitigating it, I got
Yeah,
it, sure.
making people stop.
Yep.
And it gave the town that authority, okay? And the planning board had that authority, and now the Conservation Commission has that authority, okay? Anytime you have regulations, you tend to need to have, a law, you tend to need regulations to fill in the blanks. These were the regulations that filled in the blanks. The Stormwater Committee per se came in the fall of 2010, when it looked like DEP was going to come out, well, they had come out with the new draft. And the comments were brought in, and then it sat for 3 years. EPA, I said, not DEP, EPA, they're shorthanded, and had their staffs cut and everything. But they took 3 years to get from those responses to the new one, and the rumor mill has it that that's almost out again. I've heard this from a couple of sources, one of which was Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and the other was a buddy out in Boxborough who has friends in EPA. So that was the genesis of these rules and regulations. It was, I believe, in the summer of 2010 that the planning board voted these rules and regulations in. I think there was a fairly large, you'd remember
Public
it, you were
hearing
there
and-
at the time.
And I'll tell you what I'm getting at. The reason I'm asking is that we have a mandate to protect a certain area, the
Yes.
MS4 in town.
Yeah.
We are now
Which
going
we're
to,
doing.
we're now going to expand outside that MS4.
Yeah.
We're going to include the whole town. Does that have to go to town meeting? Where do we get the authority to expand that outside of the mandated area into the whole town? That's all I'm wondering. And maybe we
Do
should have a.
need the authority.
I don't know, and that's why I kind of threw it out there. I'm
Yeah.
wondering whether we should discuss this with town council to make sure that we have the authority
Well,
to
this
do
has to
this.
go to town council anyway. You raise a good point. Certainly for wetlands areas that are outside of the MS4, we absolutely have the authority because we're not doing anything the DEP doesn't tell us we have to do anyway in wetlands.
Right. Talking about the upland, where you're gonna disturb an acre of upland and you're not in the MS4 and you're not in a wetland resource area or affecting a wetland resource area.
No, but like John points out, that ultimately it ends up in a wetland.
It runs
It-
downhill.
It does.
And there aren't that many pure upland sites.
But from from the standpoint of the law and how it stands right now, you're not required to do anything there, and we're going to say that you are required.
Right.
Yeah.
Being not required, but doing it, I don't know, is there a conflict there?
I don't know, and I guess,
I'm told and I can't quote chapter and verse, but I'm told a number of communities have voted to do exactly what we, or have chosen to do exactly what we're doing.
Just because you're not required to doesn't mean you can't do it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I
no,
don't think it's a bad idea,
No,
I
no.
just wanna make sure that we have the
Well,
authority to do
my
what
approach
we're
is
discussing
do it,
doing.
Do it, and if, you know, we're right until the judge says we're wrong. If somebody argues with us,
Well, the thing is, if you do it, whose toes are you stepping on?
well, you know, conceivably, the owner of an upland parcel that has to do more work than
Yeah.
he wanted to.
Or that he's
Or
required to.
that's necessary, right.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose, but, I would say that what trumps it is that ultimately it ends up in a
My
woodland.
personal feeling is that it is essential that he do it, because what are we doing with this? We're making him detain, so we're preventing flooding somewhere. That is the business of government anyway, to prevent floods, public welfare. We're getting water back into the aquifer, and, I just read recently a significant portion of sea level rise comes from fossil water that we have pumped out of aquifers all over the world and let flow down the nearest river. So it's been down on the ground for centuries, eons, millennia, and now we pumped it out. I mean, we've dropped the water table out in the Midwest, in the Oglala water, what do you call it, the aquifer in the middle of the country, a huge amount. We've almost got to the point where there ain't no more.
You don't have to convince me that it's a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
You might have to convince me that we have the authority to
Yeah.
do what
Well, how about-
we're contemplating.
I think we ought to run it by council.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, it has to go by council anyway.
Yeah.
So
Well,
let's, you know.
I would drop this
right.
on them right off the bat, so
Yeah.
that
Sure.
they have time to think about it. And then when you get it all done,
Yeah.
then they'll know it's, then,
There's another issue there, and that is the fee. And we had originally planned on a fee that was just a filing fee. And it was waived if it was a subdivision or a notice of intent. If it was something other, like
If you're already
a
paying.
very large site plan, for example, then that fee would kick in and then a review fee was allowed. I have played with the thought of trying to tie like a building permit. A building permit is tied to the value of the work, and this fee would be tied to the square footage of impervious surface. Like, if it were a 1,200 square foot footprint house, then it would be a certain fee. A 600-foot driveway, it would be half that much.
that's a good idea.
It's a good idea,
Well-
because now it's a pocketbook item, and it gets you to think about what you really need.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is
Yeah.
that, based on what we're talking about, stormwater
Sure.
runoff, the only constant is the area.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That is the major,
Yeah,
the
that's-
area of.
Applies to anybody.
It's the biggest issue by far is
Right, but
stormwater management.
on any given site, that's the one constant,
Yep.
Right.
and
Exactly.
that's what you can fit it on.
The square
Yeah.
footage, right.
Yep.
And how
Now,
many
the
of
good,
those
the
would-
bad news is that Ginny wasn't real pleased with that. She gave us a, yeah, you can, but, and,
Okay.
you know, all of the buts added up to way more than the, yeah, you can. You know? So it looked complicated enough that in discussions with Tracy, my thinking was just bag it. And we're getting money from, the town anyway to support the stormwater program. It is proven to be, on the short term, until the new one kicks in, we're giving money back every year. Gave money to Tim this year, almost $4,000. Last year, we gave him about $4,000 back, out of 5,000.
Right.
You know, and this year, we bought our first piece of test equipment. We've got 7 tests that we think we're gonna have to do for every one of our outfalls over a 4-year period. And this does 3 of them. And it was a way to start training people.
How many of those would actually fall outside of the NOI or subdivision anyway?
Yeah, very few.
Very
No,
few,
I
right?
agree.
So,
Yeah, since I've been on the planning board, we haven't had a job except for Ross Lane, where they did it anyways, because Steve Sawyer did it. He did a perfect stormwater management program there that hasn't come before the Concom.
Potentially along High Road, I guess. I mean, there's
Yeah,
wetlands on
but
both sides, and for the
It's a
most
minimal
part, if you've got
impact right
something.
now that the Baggett approach is probably.
Yeah, I could do something in my property and it wouldn't be, it
Yeah.
wouldn't require a notice. And that's, 4 acres.
And you're outside of the MS4,
And I'm
so
outside
you
of the
would be,
MS4,
yeah.
The other side of the street, strangely enough, is not. But, I mean, that's as much sense as it makes.
Yeah.
So, so from the standpoint of the Stormwater Committee, from my position on the committee, I'm just as happy to forget the fee, okay? And just let's not try to make anything complicated, anything that could be challenged. Let's just.
Keeping it simple, I like.
You could add it later on, or a couple of years from now,
We
if you
could
wanted
maybe
to.
add it later on, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
an issue.
Yeah. Right now, we've got a budget of 5,000 a year. It has been coming from, the general fund. The first year came from sale of town property, and that is, we still got that. There's still about 33,000 of that still on the books that we can use. But subsequent to that, it's been $5,000, that goes away, goes back into the, what's the word?
General
Goes
fund.
back into the general fund.
Goes back
at
into
the
the
end.
general fund,
Yeah.
yeah, it goes back
Yeah.
into, free cash.
I would imagine, though, as soon as we get that next permit, that's not gonna happen anymore.
Well, the first thing, when we get the permit, when we know for sure what we have to buy, then we will start buying the rest of the test kits. And there's like 4 of them at $200 or $300 a piece. That isn't a big investment. There will be a major investment probably in reagents, but we've gotta be real careful about buying them because they have relatively short, shelf lives. And there is something where, we have kicked around with Rowley, a joint venture in our testing program,
Okay.
where they buy test kits, we buy test kits, we share the reagents, okay? And, that way they get used up faster, and we don't lose stuff because it's gone beyond its shelf life.
Great idea.
That's a good idea.
And we may end up doing something, I haven't talked to Newburyport about that specific thing, but we have so far a verbal deal with Newburyport where we're doing their public education component, and they are doing our E. coli testing at the
Okay,
sewage
so they'll do the
treatment plant.
incubation. All
Yeah,
right.
so there's all kinds of ways to work together with Newburyport. And those are the 2 communities that would make the most sense. Georgetown doesn't seem to be that interested. I think they figured a way to buy it out, and the guy in charge of it is not terribly knowledgeable. Why should he be? Because he doesn't have to do anything. It's one of
Okay,
those things.
okay. So they just spend the money and someone takes care of it for them.
Somebody's gonna take care of it for them, yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
And that's fine. If you
Yep.
got the money, why not?
Just do it
know,
however
the
you wanna
reason
do it.
We're doing it ourselves is because if we had the money, we wouldn't have worker bees in the stormwater committee. We'd be all executives. So,
Yeah, listen.
so I will talk to Tracy on getting that issue covered, and see if there is any problem in Ginny's mind.
Okay.
I certainly hope not, because the way it's written, it sort of makes sense. It's a one-size-fits-all. They do it based on census tracts.
Mhm.
And if you've got enough people in a certain area, and the area has nothing to do with the topography or the layout of streets, so you've got one side of the road is MS4, the other side isn't, but this side flows into this side, And the
I know it
biggest
frustrates you.
polluter we have stormwater-wise in the entire town is Triton's parking lot. It's enormous. It's not in the MS4. The MS4 stops at the Triton boundary. And why does it stop? Because nobody sleeps at Triton.
No one lives there, yeah.
Nobody lives there, so it's not, it's just,
Doesn't-
that's insane.
It doesn't make too much common sense.
And I asked an EPA guy at a New Hampshire meeting, wrong person to ask clearly, how about can we do something that's important rather than messing with things that aren't important that are in the MS4? And his answer was yes, as long as you do the MS4 first. Now, what kind of an answer is that? How many BMTs could we do in the MS4? You know, before we ever got to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be first just after me.
Pardon me?
You can be first just after me.
Jesus. Yeah, that was, clearly the guy didn't understand the question. Anybody that actually understood the question and answered it that way would have to be totally unemployable.
I think he answered the way he had to.
Probably. Maybe, yeah.
Maybe not even the way he wanted to, but the way he had to.
That may be, but I'm gonna try his boss the next time and see if I get a better answer.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I would hope. I would hope. So,
So we will get our comments off to you,
yeah.
and you'll
Yeah,
compile
I'll
them, and
put
then
'em- I'll put 'em
bring it back
together
to us.
And, yeah, get them out. Before I waste anyone's time retyping, I will just mark up and make copies for everybody, and then we'll get them out to everybody and see if Ed doesn't like Les's comments, or Les doesn't like Ed's, and,
Comments.
you know. So there we are.
Okay.
Administratively, I don't have strong feelings. I do think it should be the whole town. I do think that we should not be laying onerous burdens on people, like making them get rid of nitrogen. I think that's really unnecessary. It would not be if we had impaired waters that had too much in the way of nitrates and phosphorus. That would be another matter, but we don't. In the whole Parker River watershed, there's a couple of upriver spots, one in Georgetown and one in Rowley, that have, I think it's nitrogen. But by the time it gets to Newbury, it's gone.
Solutions dilution.
It's gone. So you suspect that it's something local that just happens right there, and that happens to be where they test. So,
John, thank you.
so there we go. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking this over and adding a little bit of something
Like you
to
said,
it.
something we do anyway, so it's
Well,
a
yeah,
fine fit.
It isn't terribly onerous for the Concom, is it? The only thing is one more thing to enforce. One would hope that we are not gonna turn up anything to enforce, but with our history of septic systems,
That's where I was just gonna go.
yeah,
At what point with the nitrate, what point are they looking at sewage for the town of Newbury?
Not a lifetime.
I don't think anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't heard anyone saying that sewage, other than what we already have, is in the cards.
No, what would happen, Les, I think, is that they would come down and they'd say, you've got impaired waters, and those impaired waters are due to septic systems, and by such a date, you have to meet such a value. It's no longer do they accept the "I'm working on it" answer. It has to be a deliverable. It has to be a value. So they don't care how you get to that value, but you better get to it.
Yeah.
And if sewering your town is the only way that you can get to that
That
value,
is a way to
that's
get
likely,
to it.
that's likely to be an
Yeah.
impetus to get you there,
Yeah.
is right.
Another
Well, that's what
way
they're
to get
driving
to it is to track down the systems that are a problem, and Board of Health has the jurisdiction to make people replace the
Repair
failed
those
systems.
systems, yeah.
You know, and that's kinda hard, but you know.
When it's non-point source, it's a little difficult
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes to just
Yeah,
point at
it may
one
be,
set.
it may be
yeah.
impossible, in fact, in some cases, so,
The only places that don't have sewerage along the coast?
yeah. Right here, is
Right
that
here.
right? I don't have a good feel, that's right,
Yes,
huh?
sir.
I think we're one of 3 communities, aren't we?
I
No
think
kidding,
we
on
are.
the whole coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
their,
I forgot.
that's their goal eventually.
Well, Rowley doesn't have sewage, right?
Well, that could be, that's
No.
probably the other one.
Rowley,
That may be
yeah.
the other one.
I think
That's-
there's
yeah.
one more, but I'm not sure. Originally, I heard 3.
Yeah.
May have been portions of Gloucester, but they hit a lot of that.
Yeah, they get,
They did a lot of sewer work.
they
in
might be a
Gloucester.
little bit in Ipswich, I don't know.
Ipswich is pretty well under control, I
Is it?
thought.
Yeah.
I thought,
Ipswich is,
yeah.
they do, they have their own treatment plant,
But
and
that's
they
their
do,
goal.
they are sewage,
And that's why I'm asking.
majority
about
of the town is
sewage.
sewage.
Well, that would do a lot of good in many, many ways. That would be a good thing. The downside is, obviously, it's
Yeah, you
gonna
have
be
to pay
terribly
for it.
expensive.
Yeah, no kidding.
And this is the kind of topography and geology where we'd be pumping all over the place.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
It's
I
just too widespread, and
everywhere.
there's just too much elevation.
Yeah, and you've got Byfield gravel over parts of town, you have to going through ledge to get
Yeah.
gravity,
Yeah,
and you're gonna have to pump,
It
you know,
is-
just to get cover, you know?
it's just not conducive to
It
a
really
collection
isn't the
system.
kind of town where you wanna have a central sewer system.
No, probably one thing that might be worth looking into, that might work, would be a number of localized package plants.
You think that would, would it?
That-
That had occurred to me at one point. There were little centers of population like Byfield Center,
Right,
you know.
in little low areas that you could drain
Yeah.
everything to, and,
It's one of the alternatives we looked at for Plum Island.
was it?
Was it really?
Package
Yeah.
plants?
Yep, before Plum Island was.
There's a
sued.
lot to be said for that, and I guess, yeah, you'd know better than I, but package plants have come a long way, have
Oh, they
not?
have, yeah.
Yeah, you've got some reasonable plants.
Yeah, well,
And
Triton's
they'd be
got
the
one over there.
kind, you could have one operator, and he'd just make rounds, and
Caldwell, isn't it?
Governor
Nice
Dummer
one.
must have one.
Yeah,
Caldwell system.
Caldwell, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, Governor
So,
Dummer has a small plant.
Governors?
Yeah.
The
One
Governor's has a
person runs
nice
it.
plant,
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
nice plant.
Right.
It was one of the things that kept them from having a big fuel spill a few years back. Their burner didn't fire. When their burners out there are oil-fired gas burners. I'm sorry, they're gas-fired oil burner. So once the oil starts pumping, the gas comes on to fire the oil. There's an eye in there that if the gas doesn't come on, it's supposed to shut it down. Well, it didn't, and so the oil kept pumping into a burner that wasn't firing it, and it just filled the burner up and it ran into the drains in the floor and got down to the treatment plant. They managed to isolate that whole spill at the treatment plant and can contain it.
So I guess it's up to the Board of Health to make sure these systems are running well.
Yeah, and that is so much easier said than done,
Oh, I
you
bet,
know.
yeah.
Because first of all, who's gonna volunteer to have their system inspected?
Nobody,
Nobody.
yeah.
And I ran into one years ago where it was a totally untouched by human sewage leaching field. Between the septic tank and the D-box, there was a break in the pipe. And the break in the pipe was right over a fissure
An
in
aquifer.
the ledge. There was about this much soil on top of Byfield gravel, out of top of ledge. And it was going out of the pipe straight into the, presumably into the aquifer. The leaching field was clean as a whistle. Never saw a first handful of sewage.
What a system.
Yeah, that was doing a lot of good, right?
Well,
Never backed up, did it?
And the property backed onto the marsh, of course.
Is there ever any testing goes on of like roadside ditches or anything like that? I mean, the road I happen to live on, you know, I'm going up and down the road, walking the dog. The ditch looked good, and then you get to a certain spot, and there's just like algae and,
Cloudy.
yeah, I mean, it just looks like.
Looks like something's
And
been
then you
dumped
look
there.
at the house right there, and, you know, half the time the whole yard is underwater.
Yeah.
And it just kind of makes, you know, I mean, it seems like there's situations like that, you don't want to call out those people, but if it's really a problem.
There will be testing done as part of the MS4 program in the MS4 area. We haven't taken the MS4 mandate and spread that all over town. We figured we had enough problems just doing what we're told. This rules and regulations is something entirely different.
No, I know what you're
You know,
going
we're
at.
not volunteering to test what we don't have to test. But in any place where we're discharging from a pipe into a ditch, which is a lot of places actually, then those will be tested. We have to test, we've got 80-odd outfalls, and we have to test 20% of them, 25% of them a year over a 4-year period, starting the second year. So the way it's written now, and who knows what's going to come out, we've got a year to get ourselves organized, and then we do 22, let's say 22 sites a year for 4 years.
Do you rotate them every year? Is that
Well,
what
you do different ones.
Different ones,
Different
yeah.
ones, yeah.
So you
You have to, over that 4-year period,
You gotta get
we
'em
must
all?
have tested them all, yes.
And when you test them, what is the testing protocol?
Well, it's rather loose from what they said. What the thing says, it references a protocol, which, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I do know a loose document when I see one. And basically, all they were saying is, for heaven's sakes, wash your test tubes. And Yvonne is who is running the test program for us, and she is a chemist, and she has been doing stream testing for a long time.
Yeah.
She's taking the opposite approach of doing it absolutely by the book. And I'm having to, pull her back on that one, because who can afford to do that, time-wise? My thinking is that we do it in a reasonable, professional way, but not totally by the book, so that it holds up in court. When we find something, we dial up EPA, and they get somebody out here that does it, but totally by the book, because at that point now, we're gonna end up with an argument.
For any given outfall, are you testing it just on a singular storm or over a certain period of time?
Well, first of all, we have to test it we have to look for dry flows. I have not seen much of the dry flows, and have you?
No.
I haven't seen, can't say I've ever seen a
So
flow.
there's no illegal connections?
That's a good sign. There's
Yeah.
a couple of
If there's
connections.
no rainfall and you're getting flow out of it,
Then
something's
something
wrong.
right,
Yeah,
Usually.
if it hasn't rained for a week and you got this much water. Now, we are getting one, there's an outfall that goes right into the Parker, right at the bridge on Main Street. And that has to be dragging down the swamp out behind the convenience store.
That's flowing?
Yeah,
constantly?
it's, you've got quarter pipe flow,
Yeah.
if it hasn't rained for a week. So that's clearly draining something. I can't believe that's an illicit discharge. And we got out there and we're scratching our heads.
It's difficult to trace that. There's an outfall there, there's a pipe there that comes in from the railroad track right away out back. And there's a wetland resource area out there, and then you get just to the Byfield Center side of the railroad tracks, and there's a channel in the yard. And the channel travels for about 150 to 200 feet, and halfway in this guy's yard disappears back in the ground and goes in a pipe. And then it comes down into the system somehow, somewhere in the center of Byfield. But we went out there the other day, and we were doing a site visit out there. We were looking at the bridge, the condition the bridge was in. And so we just happened to be looking around, and where's this water going, and where's it coming from? And I look on one side of the driveway, and it's nothing but a bowl. And I was thinking to myself, how the heck's it get out of there? Well, I look over, and here we have a catch basin, probably 20 feet off the street, in the center of this bowl, covered in vegetation that we didn't even know existed. So that we're apt to find those kinds of things as we do.
That sounds like a job
I
for some
found
good
two
dye
more
test
the other
out there.
day.
Boy, I'll tell you.
I found two more at the end of Hanover Street.
Did you really?
They're about this far from where the state stopped paving, so I can only assume they belong to us and not the state. I mean, the state owns the highway and a certain distance at each intersection, and I can't believe they don't pave where they're supposed to, presumably. They pave per the state layout.
Exactly,
And,
yes.
these are 10, 15 feet back towards
Away.
town from the state layout. But to answer your question, we've got to do both. We've got to test, we've got to observe for dry weather flow. If there is any, we test it, and we have to test for wet weather flow. And we have to test in the spring. There's a 3-month period that we can do our testing, and we cannot test anything in July. I think it's March, April, May, I believe. It may be April, May, June, I'm not sure, I have to go back and look. And that was something that was just tucked in the last reference in New Hampshire. We haven't seen anything.
So you don't even know if it's in the mass permit.
If you
But
have to test for dry weather flow, why would you rule out those 3 months?
I think the presumption is that most of your testing is gonna be wet weather flow, and they want to see you in the area where the time frame where most stuff is being washed into the sewer. Now, I don't know that. I mean, I didn't make it up. They did.
Yeah, no.
But that would be my guess, that just,
Right.
there's more water in the spring than there is in, say, the summer. In the winter, there's not a, I mean, it's dicey. Sometimes you got water, sometimes everything's frozen.
Right, but if you're testing dry weather flow for, like we were saying, for illegal connections.
Yeah.
That would be a good time to be doing it,
When?
June, July, and August.
Yeah, it would be.
You'd almost have to do it those months. I'm
Yeah,
wondering if
right.
I'm wondering if those restrictions are on your wet weather flow. Your dry weather, if you find flow
They
in
may
dry
be wet weather
you're
only.
probably
Yeah.
obligated to test it whenever you find it.
Yeah,
not
that
just-
hasn't shown up in Massachusetts yet. I'm quoting that from New Hampshire permit, and the smart money says ours is gonna be almost like it, except we don't own Great Bay, they do. You know, Great Bay has changed a lot of things for them that we don't have to put up with. But we're testing for conductivity, salinity, temperature, which goes with conductivity, and that's the one piece of equipment we've got. Fluorides, ammonia, E. coli, and what else? Oh, surfactants, which are soaps that went to college. I had no idea what a surfactant was. I had to go online to find out. I never heard of these, but you know what you heard about surfactants? Surfactant, surfact, it's anything that emulsifies dirt. In other words, soap. It's the detergent.
Honestly, John, no, I
I
can't say
never
I
heard
have.
of it. Totally new word.
Not by
on
that
me.
name, anyway.
Totally new word.
Is this something EPA came up with?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
It's not just them. Since I've started digging into this stuff, I've seen it elsewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're into this, it's not an uncommon word, but it's one I'd never run into.
Yeah.
But there's other things they could test for, but these are the major indicators. Chlorine says maybe somebody's dumped their swimming pool into the storm system. Ammonia is always a sign of sewage somewhere along the line. There is no phosphates, and that's a little surprising. There's no testing for them.
Yeah.
You get nitrogen in your ammonia, NH3, NH4.
I'd like to make a-
Temperature, conductivity gives you a hint that you've got heavy metals in there somewhere.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go home,
Go home.
okay?
All right.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Close the
Okay, you-
public hearing.